for March 4th board meeting. We're going to open the meeting now. And we did have an anticipated executive session, which we anticipated that we had it. So now we're here, and we're going to start the meeting with Pledge of Allegiance and the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. She doesn't vote. We have the potential to have a guest come today. It is likely but not sure that Assembly Member Patricia Fahey will be joining us at some point. Her schedule is a bit in flux, so she arrives and we will work around. The roll call is, well, we're all here, and thank you all for being here. And we're going to have, for the good of the order, I would like to just open up by thanking Jeff Tabakian and the custodial staff and Lonnie for making this happen in this space. It adds an extra layer of challenges, or extra layers upon layers of challenges from changing on the website and the messages that go out to adjusting all the technology and the space and all the different spaces that are needed. So appreciated that in many different ways. And thank you to the community, of course, for coming to a different space and how many people gained their transportation to this place. We also have the exciting moment of announcing that Odyssey of the Mind began again, right? This Saturday. There was
Three teams?
Three teams. Very exciting. So
Two teams.
And Rob, you had mentioned that you had something.
I did. I got to go in for my fourth grade daughter's class to go see the Star Lab, which was so cool. It was a really cool thing that they brought here. So, yeah.
Excellent. And also the Gilder Girls swim team is going to state. Wow. Yeah. Okay. Anything else?
I could, I'd just like to give a shout out to Lonnie. I had a computer meltdown and I went to everybody. I went to Geek Squad, Google, Apple, everything. I went to Lonnie and he fixed it for me and he was my savior and I will be forever in his debt. So thank you, Lonnie.
Awesome. All right. With that, we move to item 2. Opportunity for the public to be heard. This is an opportunity that we have at every meeting. It is also an opportunity to be heard, but we do not address specific comments unless there's any follow-up, in which case we can follow up and podium is there for anyone who would like to step to it. That wasn't in order. Good. Okay. Well, there we go. Now let's move to 3.1, the third grade presentation from the class of Mr. P. Can you give us a word background?
Yes, I can. I just want to make sure that you have something.
That's beautiful. The terracing helps avoid erosion too.
Okay, here we go. All right, so as you all know, we've been focusing on having our staff members really showcasing some of the great things that they're doing in the classroom, some of the programs that are going on. Staff members have been really showing us all over the board different items and ideas. Mr. Pastiglione is one of our third grade teachers. I asked him to kind of showcase some of the amazing things that he's doing in the room. And he's also kind of showcasing what the third grade is doing all together. So I will leave it at that and go on with the presentation.
The month of February was a busy one in third grade, and not just because it's the month of love, but also because February is the month where we celebrate and learn about influential African Americans for Black History Month. A couple of years ago, Mrs. Malloy found an amazing resource that not only teaches students about influential Black Americans in just 5 minutes a day, but also makes it fun and engaging for them. And we do this by discussing a different slide about an influential African American each day. with these biography card necklaces, each with a different Black American picture on the front and a couple of sentences about who they are on the back. Students come in each day, grab a necklace for the day, read that card, and wear it all day long. Anytime there's some downtime, students can cafeteria, or even in the hallway. Students can share their American with other teachers. It's only 2-3 sentences per person, but it's more than enough to expose third graders to a plethora of influential Black Americans over the course of the month. Studying Black history provides our students with a broader perspective on the struggles, triumphs, and achievements of African Americans throughout history. It allows them to recognize the resilience and determination exhibited by many Black leaders and activists who have fought for civil rights and social justice. By understanding these historical events, students can develop critical thinking skills and empathy, which are essential for becoming informed and responsible citizens.
Yeah. Tell us about her.
Maya Angelou was an award-winning poet and author. Although before she was publishing any of her work, she was a dancer and actress. Maya did a lot of work to help the civil rights movement, and she has been honored by multiple presidents.
Very cool. Thanks, Annie. Furthermore, incorporating Black History Month into our curriculum helps to celebrate the diversity of our school community. It allows students to reflect the curriculum and promotes a sense of pride in their heritage and background. By learning about the achievements of prominent Black figures in history, students can be inspired to set high goals for themselves and strive for success in their own lives. From Harlem to the land down under, the month of February also brought third graders to the continent of Australia.
Seatbelt sign is on. Please fasten your seatbelt. Keep it fastened and visible while seated. Yes, you can release it as shown here when needed. The cabin crew also provides loop.
From exploring Australian artifacts and communities
These are the first sauce in
You gonna smell it?
Wait, that's fake? Wait, that's
No, I mean like smell it. And making Aboriginal dot artwork, to picking an Australian animal to research and write about. Most recently, students have been hard at work on their animal research projects and are excited to share their findings with their classmates and families during a writing celebration at the end of March.
all about the bandicoot. Physical features. Did you know that bandicoot means pig rat? The bandicoot is not a rodent. It is a marsupial, like kangaroos and koalas. That means it has a pouch. The bandicoot looks like a large rat and can be as big as a rabbit. The bandicoot is covered in short fur that is brown, gray, white, tan, or gold. The bandicoot can be 11 to 32 inches long and weigh between 0.4 and 3.5 pounds. Its ears can be pointed, short, or long. How cute! Unique characteristics. Its front legs of the bandicoot are smaller than its hind legs. Its powerful hind legs help it to hop like a rabbit. Both of his front legs and hind legs have clawed paws that the bandicoot uses for digging and defending itself. Map. Where the bandicoot lives. The bandicoot lives in Australia's surrounding islands. Habitat. The bandicoot is a small animal that lives in Australia and surrounding islands too. It likes to live in areas that have lots of places for it to hide from predators like dingoes and owls. During the day, they nest in shallow holes in the ground lined with waves. This hides them from predators and protects them from the weather. The bandicoot can be found in forests, swamps, and thickets. Diet. About my animal's diet. The bandicoot is an omnivore. That means it eats both plants and animals. Insects are bandicoot's favorite food. It will dig cone-shaped holes in the ground looking for insects. The bandicoot will also eat lizards, mice, snails, grass, mushrooms, seeds, and fruit. Fun facts. Did you know that there are 20 known species of bandicoots? Bandicoots are nocturnal, so it hunts for food at night. A baby bandicoot is called a joey, and it lives in its mom's pouch until it is fully grown. My favorite thing. With its rabbit ears, the bandicoot is sometimes called the Easter bandicoot that brings Easter eggs instead of the Easter bunny.
All right. Thank you to Mr. Keys, the great class, and Mr. Key for putting that together. We appreciate the chance to see what's going on and to share some of the things we're learning and doing. With that, we're going to move to a different presentation that will have fewer very marsupials, I guess.
Maybe.
Maybe next time. The budget presentation is at your country.
Okay. Thank you, Rachel, for being my tech person for today. Appreciate it. All right, so Jim and I will present the 2024-25 budget. Then we will go from there with all the decisions and conversations that come up from.
So as we've said all along, we want to provide as many sustainable opportunities as possible for students, adjust to enrollment trends and realities, and limit the impact on local taxpayers to only what's needed. We want to have a fiscally sound budget where our revenues equal our expenses, and in a normal year, that should be the case. In a bad year, we have a little bit of flux, about 2.5%. That is our fund balance, our allocated fund balance.
So I want to apologize. Assemblymember Fahey's on her way. She should be here in about a half an hour. So budgets and assembly thing. I apologize for that.
Process dates, the next time we get together is April 8th, and we expect to adopt the budget and the property tax report card. Propose that to you for adoption. Deadline for Board of Education petitions is the 22nd of April. April 23rd is when mail-in and early mail ballots are ready. They put a new law in place, so we have to adjust that a little bit. 26th is the absolute deadline for the board to approve the budget. We hold our budget hearing on May 13th, and the May 21st is our vote. So we are maintaining funds for maintenance projects. It was $325,000 this year. We have brought it down a little bit because we've started ticking things off on our list. We're working on internal camera systems upgrade at the middle school, high school, and other deferred maintenance items. We have a $100,000 capital outlay project that's focused on the high school, middle school campus. The roofing here was this year's $100,000 project. So we try to move back and forth between the campuses. Continuation of funds for professional development for the Wonders program. Potential staffing increase to address noted areas of concern and growth in the district population. We'll talk about that on the next slide. And increased equipment expenses to give us more flexibility and to catch up on certain things we're a little short on for equipment. So.
And just an example of how things, projects can happen and make this happen. We just had something go down in the middle school, and one part was $11,000 to fix it. So these things happen where you have to plan and be prepared for it. Unfortunately, we see it, but with the plan that Jim has had, we're prepared and ready for it. Credit Jim to the director of facilities to be quick on it, but just an example. These things can run from $11,000 all the way up. Even though we have repair reserves and other items, it's still good to have the ability to keep on taking away at the items that don't need to be taken care of. All right, on to this one. So this maintains all currently funded positions, and as you know, we've increased our positions over the past years. Last year, prior years, we added positions through COVID money. Those monies stayed, and we took those into the general fund as a social worker and an AIS person at the elementary school. Last year, we hired a special education teacher, full-time business teacher. So we were adding on and continuing our growth in the district. This kind of still does it. So one of the things that we're looking at is adding a third day to our BOCES person for communications. Our communication needs have increased over the years. They've done a great job helping us build to where we are, but now it's time to lay out and keep going with our communication efforts that we're doing throughout the district. And then we have some options that we have to do through, kind of be where we are. So also I want to talk about the staffing we have. This is a thing, it's a pilot program talking about our instructional components in our building. So when we talked about it at our curriculum meetings, our classrooms, we're buying tables, we're buying items, but are we changing the outcomes of what is in the room? Is the furniture in the room allowing our staff and our students to really explore learning in its full environment? We've talked to other school districts where they, some schools, some teachers don't even have desks any longer. We're not saying that in any way, shape, or form, but we have heard those stories. But we visited a school district that's working with David Stubbs, who is a designer, and he works with different programs on how you can use your environment in your school. And we do want to continue to do that. Our goal is to develop a pilot program next year. To be at least allowed 2 to 4, it all depends on the budget, really, and how much money we get or don't get, of the classrooms to allow for our teachers to transform their learning environment, and also to have David Stubbs come in and provide some professional development. So it's an opportunity to get us from where we are with our desks and our current rollout and kind of start exploring other options and avenues and providing the opportunity for our staff to take control of that and for them to have the continuing experience to do so. Any questions on that? Yeah. So, SRO, potential discussion as we talked about last time. I said that there's an option for us to develop an SRO. As the board asked, there was another opportunity that I wanted to bring up as an option for you to come back to it. As the SRO, they give it, it's a K-12. They can act as an official, pseudo-educator, security monitor. They act as a security coordinator and law enforcement liaison. There's options for us to still have that without having an SRO, along with having some instructional component that puts into it. AIS is an Academic Intervention Services. That's what AIS stands for. We do have an AIS plan that the district follows and goes through. There's been a discussion point since the beginning of the year. Mr. Paventio and Mrs. Conroy and I have been discussing this since probably October, November. In the fall, we utilize our STAR assessments for the building and looked at where our students currently were and weren't. Then we had our state benchmarking that came out in late October, November. So when we were seeing that, there were deficits that we were seeing with the current way that we program our students, that's with duration and frequency, allowing us to be able to hit all the students that were in need for that. We wanted to see more data, so we waited until January. January came up, and in our new benchmarking, we saw that there was a need for students to be able to continue to get further AIS. Some students tested out, but other students were testing in. In order for us to continue our growth in AIS for math and for next year, again, this could be a bubble, as Mr. Paventio and Mrs. Conroy were saying. that maybe this is 2 years of intense services for these students, and then maybe after we start coming back maybe from the COVID variables or other things, we don't need that any longer, or that transitions to other resources in the district. But they were seeing an AIS math teacher could be possibly the support for our elementary school for next year, part-time. So that would be a part-time person coming in to be able to hit some of the needs of our AIS, while then they look at our AIS plan and our multi-tiered systems of support plan in the district to make sure that we're meeting all of our needs of our students. Because that's going to take a good year at least to really dig into that and understand, what are we doing, and is it really helping our students, or is there anything we can do to help support the needs further?
What is our AIS staffing now?
Right now, currently at the elementary school, we have 2 reading teachers and a AIS math person and an AIS/reading person. Our special education teacher that we hired last year does do 1 or 2 AIS pull-ups to be able to help support some of that.
We also have people in the middle school.
We have AIS teachers who teach us 6 at the middle school. That's great. The idea behind this is, Mr. Benzie and Mrs. Conroy said, is early intervention. We get them early, we start being able to hit them where they need to. So hopefully the idea is to have them test out of it, and we don't need their supports later on as we move on. The other option is in still giving the safety and security component, is then having an SR, so I wrote these down. Is having a security/hall monitor. The security/hall monitor, depending on how we hire for the position, you could hire a retired law enforcement person to still be able to help guide the district in some law enforcement components. I don't understand law enforcement completely. The principals don't, even though that's part of our security component. Trish, you sit on our district safety committee where we have, law enforcement people help guiding us, and you can see how that, they help guide us on things that we don't fully understand. The security monitor can be used in a variety of ways, grades 6 through 12, monitoring calls. They can do de-escalation techniques. If there is a physical environment or a physical conflict, a trained person can go in there and do that, not having your staff members be put in the way of doing so. That can become a concern, but staff members are feeling like they need to get involved into a situation they're not trained to do so, or are meant to get into a physical environment. Having a trained security monitor there to be able to pull students away safely can be important. Will also help with having somebody in the hallways. The high school is looking at switching e-hall pass. That's an electronic pass system. And with that pass system, it allows people in the hallway to know exactly where they are. People can check on who gave the pass and who didn't. And it allows for the district to have data, right? So the high school then can say, all right, well, we had a vandalism issue in our bathroom. Who was in the hallway at the time? E-hall passed it correctly. We'll be able to find out who was in the hallway quickly, so at least they can do a further investigation of not knowing at all. The high school principal has been working with the staff on that and getting their feedback and input and developing through if that's a program that they want to move forward. It's not chipping. It's a pass system that they use out of a kiosk. So instead of it being paper, they just sign in and out with. I'm signing here. I'm going to the bathroom. I'm coming back. It's just time stamping instead of having to use pass. Yeah, it's not.
Sorry.
I had the same thing explained to me of what it was as well. So those are a lot of times what they are. Security monitors and hall monitors help provide some structures and cover that we can't always do throughout the day. So that is an option instead of having the SRO, which can do some of those components, and it still allows for some of the security that comes up, along with the workplace violence prevention program that's coming up through the federal regulations. You want to have mitigation efforts. Having a security monitor in the building can act as a mitigation effort when there's issues that arise. They can be able to be a part of those program plans. So,
And they would be
questions?
there all day.
They would be there all day. Yeah.
From bell rings till the bell rings.
My goal would actually be, we look at exactly how their schedule would work. So maybe from when the bell rings to after the bell rings, so like some supervision time, and then also giving opportunities for them to do extracurricular events. So, we don't have a security monitor. We have, monitors, people helping out. They're not completely trained when we have some of our larger events. So let's say we have large events where we have a combat school or a school that we're always going against, and we have 1,000 people there. Having a trained security monitor who knows our students, who has rapport with them, can be very helpful. Also, if there's a situation with parents in the parking lot, or there's a situation that again, I'm just saying things that have happened in other places that I've done. Having someone out there to professionally de-escalate the situation is another thing that we do not currently have that can be proposed.
This was presented in your Friday news notes. I didn't fully comprehend how this was being packaged. You're saying instead of a full-time SRO, here's 2 pieces.
Correct.
If it was kind of a budgetary presentation, then you're saying half of it would go towards AIS, half of it go towards hall monitoring.
Jim just said 50-50. So it's an academic support and security monitor position. That kind of proposal that I'm giving the districts. We're giving two things at once with almost the same amount of funds. The reason why we need almost the same amount of funds is we will supplement that with Title I funds. So the academic intervention services person can be utilized out of Title I, which is a federal grant, which we can get money back from that. So that's why it would meet the same budgetary amount that SRO would meet, but we would be able to get part-time and the hall monitor.
Different objectives.
Similar, right? Because we're still looking at a safety component at the high school, middle school.
Okay.
And then adding an academic part of it as well.
Supporting the area that's been identified with me that wasn't necessarily as visible earlier.
Correct.
The more and more data was coming.
And through data that it would help to be able to support it. We've had multiple conversations throughout the past 3 months regarding this. And they've been, sometimes it goes for an hour where Mr. Vivenzio and Mrs. Conroy really are going back and forth with each other about like the validity of the test, the validity of the data that's going on, our programs and processes. I mean, they really are not looking at this idly. They're looking and making this decision based off the benefit of the students and what we can do in the future.
Do you want us to?
Yeah, absolutely.
Does anyone have more questions or thoughts on this so we can help?
Is there one that seems more favorable in comparison to the other?
I just want to make sure I understand. So the same amount of funds, we have either an SRO or math support and hall monitor.
Correct.
Okay,
Yeah,
it's not a hard one for me.
that's,
Where do you go?
Yeah.
What's your thought? I mean, I was surprised by the survey results, but I also think the survey results didn't capture the fact that there were trade-offs. And I think had the questions been asked differently, we may have gotten different responses, and no survey is perfect. And I certainly appreciated the feedback. And like I said in the last meeting, the feedback is coming from people who are in the building. And I feel like we have to take that into consideration. But I kind of where I thought the community was is that we didn't want law enforcement in our schools. And I personally am not in favor of that unless we really have a problem where we feel like we need that type of intervention on a day-to-day basis. I'm not in favor of that. And I did voice a request earlier for additional math support in particular, but I've seen that being done in other schools, and I think it's coming out of the pandemic, the learning loss is evident, and I think that's an area where we could provide additional support, particularly at a younger age, to get students on the right track.
Do you want to go around Carla too?
I agree. The idea of having, that 50-50 split between hall monitor security and somebody who can do AIS services seems like, that's like benefit. I don't know. I guess I just didn't think of that as like the alternative, of like the SRO conversation. So to have that as an option, I think is that just serves us so well. So that would be my bad.
I think as a student, it wouldn't really make much of a difference to me whether or not we had a resource officer or like a hall monitor. So at that point, why not also have someone?
Hey, I'm truly gonna miss you when you're.
No, I will always certainly support anything that would provide more instructional resources for students above an SRO or any type of security.
How do you feel the staff will feel about that online? Will they open arms embrace it? Will they not want to?
I don't know that answer, and I don't want to make an assumption based off what staff would say. I do know that based off of some staff would feel more comfortable having person in the building that could do law enforcement. I mean, based off of that one survey, but maybe doesn't want law enforcement. This is a good opportunity. And again, budgetarily, they don't cost as much as an SRO.
And there are employees.
And there are employees, correct? Yep. And so there's a lot of positives to having a security monitor, especially someone who is a retired officer or someone who had law enforcement understanding. They can add a different control and understanding to the district for us. I can't speak for staff when I haven't.
Yeah, I just looked at it.
I will tell you that in most districts that I've been in most high schools, they usually have a security monitor or home.
I'll take this opportunity to reiterate something I've said before around I'm still pretending. I'm confused why school districts pay for law enforcement presence. It feels like that's something that should be provided by law enforcement, but that's just me. I don't know if there's an opportunity to continue the conversation for could someone presence be provided free of charge, because that's part of the general law enforcement that's provided overall. Yeah, I think I'm in favor of the latter. I have a quick question about like when we budget. I mean, we're just talking about buckets of money going out for the budget, and I don't think this decision has to be made right this second tonight whether we do, because it's the same amount of money, right? So it's just kind of continuing the conversation.
It's kind
forward,
of
at least letting you know where you want to go.
correct, because it's looking at for me to make sure that when I'm making these decisions based off of our staff and where we're going as a district, you are correct. You're approving the money that I spent, right? And where we go, but it really gives me an understanding of the direction that the district wants me to go, and understanding that academic and safety component together, it allows for the wide array of topics that we can address with one budgetary outcome, plus the fact that we can use title funds to be able to help support some of that with offset.
Yeah,
that's a positive as well.
Yeah, so whenever you need more free money.
Jim, do you have anything to add?
I'm good with the proposal. I think it's good.
All right, thank you for thinking about that, and thank you for looking at the big picture again before walking into a,
Yeah. And if I were going to recommend what I would recommend the latter.
May I have one last thing? So Albany County Sheriff's participates in something called a threat assessment coordination.
Yep, we work with them, and we've also utilized their services.
Okay.
So speaking of Albany County Sheriff, I do want to put a little shout out to them. They work very, very well with our district. We have an Albany County Sheriff person who comes to all of our district safety meetings. They are on call when we need them. I am on a text message basis if there's situations that come up. They work very well with us. They work with our threat assessment controls whenever we have threat assessment things that we do here. That threat assessment is a little bit different because it's a wider variety, so they get all of the people from outside their community, so they can pull in reports and other issues that come up. But we have worked with them as well. So, and they've been great. And I will say that they've been a good partner.
Yeah, I think that's just one other thing that we're doing on the safety and security front. It's worth it.
And they have, so not all schools have the same threat assessment protocol that we have, and some schools are working towards it. We went to
right. You've been in the, I think this is just a time to say shout out because you've been doing things in advance of other districts.
Well, I will say our staff.
Our
We've been working really hard on it.
Has been in the forefront of things and doing things that have been suggested we've already done.
Last year,
I hold nothing on that. I've not done that.
But the sheriffs had their training last year, and the whole school threat assessment was a big issue that came up, and there was a lot of training that came out of that. And I can't forget Dewey's last name, so I can say it. I apologize. But he's one of the major people who developed threat assessments for schools. And I've shared our threat assessment protocol with all the county sheriffs who have shared them with their SROs. Yep. All right. Thank you. And we're pretty excited about the pilot program too. It's a pretty fun idea and thing to be able to transfer and transform our classrooms.
Lessons. So based on the timing of grants and the ability to put a lower number out there if we have the grants, I'll start at the bottom first. I don't think it's the right time to go out for electric buses at this point. When we do it, probably next year, we'll have more time to get the grants. We'll have more time to communicate with the public. We'll have more time to prepare for this and prepare everyone for it. So that's my recommendation. I do recommend that we do 2 large 72 passenger diesel buses this year, which is $350,000 actually, because there are some borrowing costs. But those are aided over 5 years in our transportation aid ratio. As far as the electric buses, we wanted to talk a little about the mandate and how that works together with everything. So as of 2027, you are required under current state law to purchase only zero emissions buses. That can be hydrogen, that can be electric, they have a litany of them. We would be going electric because we don't have hydrogen resources around here that we know of. So giving us another year also helps us make sure that the better technology is there and some of the kinks and issues have been worked out. So my recommendation is starting in 2025, we do that knowing that we have to do it starting in 2027 under current state law. The deadline for having the entire fleet switched over is 2035 under current state law, which is going to be a lift. I mean, let's be real honest here, but that's why we went out for a plan that's being finalized right now about how to get the resources in, what supports we can get, how many buses we're going to do every year, what those buses will cover, so that we start with our shortest routes and we work outwards from there as the technology gets better so that we can actually cover all of our routes. And that's what the finalized plan is that will be coming out. I showed you snippets of it last month. But
And as we discussed too, there's only going to be small opportunities to buy buses that will get the large range that we know we have to get. So, meaning the diesel buses, we can only purchase currently now for 2027. After that, we are no longer able to buy those diesel buses or long range buses with the current regulations. So we're going to be kind of beholden to whatever there is at the time when we get out there. So being able to at least upgrade some of our fleet now, knowing that those could last us another 10 years, it will at least give us safeguards so that as we go through the transition, give time for the technology to catch up to where it is.
Sorry, I was just suggesting that by then it will be warm enough that we won't bring back.
Is there
That is God's human, sorry.
Is there any thoughts on not going out for
There was a letter to the editor of the Times Union this week about hydrogen buses. Is that different than, propane buses, I'm sorry. Is that different from hydrogen?
it's still a fossil fuel, so technically it's not zero emission.
Because it's the writer who came from some association that represents that technology says it does meet a lot of the same emission standards one would expect, the lack of emissions that one would gain from electric. I'm not a proponent, I'm just asking the question. Is that something worth exploring?
I can certainly look into it. The only two that I know of right now are hydrogen and electric that are technically zero emission. I can certainly look into that.
I'll just state that based off of the regulations, that's my knowledge of conversation that I've had, propane is not going to be one of the buses that can be able to purchase given what's currently out there.
So are there even electric buses on state contract?
Yes, there are from all the vendors that provide them because they know the diesels are coming off, so they're ramping up the electric to try to crisscross.
Are there any other thoughts about electric buses? Technology-wise, I see it better than we, but I do see that we are in a climate crisis as a world, and as a community, we should figure out how much we can do to support change that would hopefully help the community.
I agree. One of the reasons we're doing diesel this year is because there were issues obtaining gas engines, which are less polluting than the diesel. So it's it's a little odd, but it's something that we have to do to make sure we can still have a fleet that works for longer trips into the 2030s.
I don't disagree. I think the decisions that are being made are completely appropriate. It's frustrating that we don't have the technology. And I'm also curious about the life cycle analysis of electric bus versus diesel bus, because what goes into creating it, what goes into building the battery. Battery technology is getting better.
Right.
Would you be okay if we stop this
course.
conversation? We have a guest here. Thank you. Coming in.
Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt that much.
Hi, I'm Rachel Guilford, and school board president. Here's the board is here. Go around the room. We know Tim, our student board member. Paige Lehman. You guys can introduce yourselves. This is not
Hi, Barbara Owens.
Barbara.
I'm RJ Larry.
Tim Kramer.
Hello, Tim.
Do you know Frank?
Yeah.
Of course, yes.
Rob Sims.
Trisha Putnam. Robin Melody.
Hi.
Thank you very much for being here.
Yes.
Do you want the podium?
Sure. Thank you for allowing me to interrupt. I'm sorry. I
And
always
that's the owl in the room on the tripod, so it's being recorded.
being recorded.
Yeah.
Okay, that's
We're always trying to.
yes, wonderful. Again, thank you for allowing me to come in. We always try to get in before the budget finishes, and then it always catches up on us. And your meetings are often during the height of our toughest session days. So it runs very late, and there's always a number of related events. Since I was last year, I became higher education chair, so it means I wear a lot more hats. And there were 2 of the 3 events tonight were also SUNY and CUNY and related events. So it took me a while, and I'd warned Frank, but I just, if it's okay, and again, to be informal, I just like to take a pulse and let you know where a few things are going. And then I hope provide a few reassurances. There's been, last year, it seemed for the first year, there was a lot of calmness around pre-K-12 funding. And this year there's been a lot more upheaval again in terms of the funding formula and some of the proposals. But I think we're going to weather that. And of course, most of my entire 109th district really came out okay on the overall proposal, but many other districts did not. So I was just going to rattle off some of the numbers, but not. And then I welcome the comments. Tim, I know you're still in touch with so many people, so you can probably go through these numbers easier than I can. But essentially, just a second. Gotta catch I had my finger right on it and I let it go. Let's see. Essentially, as you know, even though the governor did propose increases, and again, we're working off the governor's proposal right now, and then we propose a one-house resolution in response to that. And the Senate, I just left a brief Senate event, and they are working on theirs as well. So we're in the thick of that. We've just started briefings tonight on what some of those resolutions will look like. I know we're doing higher education tomorrow, and pre-K to 12 will probably be either tomorrow night or Wednesday, but we hope to have what is, again, considered the one house resolution, at least our discussions or debates on it, if you will, by the end of this week, because they hope to have a draft by next week. And I will say, I know the speaker was on Susan Arbetter tonight on Capitol Tonight, and he too was trying to give some reassurances that there'll be a concerted effort to try to avoid changing this hold harmless cap that has gotten particularly a number of rural school districts or those that have lost population a little bit alarmed, because many, I know you saw a little bit of an increase here, but many other school districts did not. So there's been a lot of attention on that, which quite frankly is also taking away from some of the higher education issues that we're trying to get funded. But overall, it's $35 billion. No one spends more than New York. So it's, sometimes we forget about that, but it is still that and healthcare, the two biggest parts of the budget. Just if it's, we call it eds and meds. So that's how it's referred to. And it really does tend to dominate the budget. So it's 35 billion. It is still an increase, but again, because of this whole harmless change, that's what you're seeing a lot of upheaval over. And I think that's going to change. I should also add, and Tim, I know you've been at this much longer than me, there's renewed talk about going back at the formula. I've become a complete pessimist about it because there have been so many efforts over the years to change the funding formula because there are many flaws in it. And very few people actually understand all the components of that funding formula. And every year, a few years, we had to come and backfill, if you were. We were able to get a few thousand extra to help backfill here when the formula didn't treat the school district as well. Anyway, there's a renewed effort to go back at that formula. I've become a little bit of a cynic. I don't know where you want that.
I'm very happy to represent one school.
One school district, right. And so far, I mean, this district has held pretty steady. Your enrollment, I think, is holding pretty. Whereas what's happening are so many other school districts, especially as a result of COVID, we've lost about 10% of this. All the school enrollment across the state. And the areas that have been hit most, the hardest really have been some of the urban schools, as well as the most rural. And there's, as many of you know, there's been a national shift toward homeschooling. And those numbers hurt the overall enrollment as well. And I have some concerns about that. I very much respect a parent's right. But there are concerns that there's a lot of students that have been really lost, if you will, that we're not tracking, especially since COVID. So that's a bigger problem, may not be as much here, but we are hearing it again, particularly in some of those that have seen a significant drop. So just know the formula is being discussed again. I don't see any formula change this year, but there is a renewed effort to do that. The other issues, there is a funding increase, a 10% increase for summer school services. We will see how much that holds. There is another big increase proposed for pre-K funding. You still, pre-K does not affect you here, right?
No, we have pre-K.
The full day? Do you have the full day?
We have the full day.
You do? I'm sorry. I guess.
Organization. The problem is going to be that we can't find enough providers to be able to fill all their slots.
And unfortunately, you're in good.
Unused money that
and some of that is the pay, right, for the staff.
Yeah.
That they're
If there was increases in those funding speed, also maybe decrease the amount of students and increase the funding that we're allowed to be able to pay, we can create more programs.
This is I'm part of a huge sign-on letter on this again, and this is unfortunately you're in good company on that because that money, there is money being left on the table, even though the need is there, and the staffing, it's not unlike the child care staffing. So yes, we'll see another increase, but it's not going to help if we can't backfill and address the wages and address the shortages. So that's pre-K, a 3.2% increase for the expense-based aid on with BOCES, and another small increase in after-school funding. I don't know, you're not getting as much. It's a very small amount, unfortunately. I've used to spend a lot of time on this, and it's been very, very hard to move the needle overall on after-school funding, even though I think it's as critical as ever. The EV school buses, probably many of you saw the article the last day or two. I'm one who has supported EV, trying to transition. We had the first with the CDTA, the very first electric buses in all of upstate. We're very proud of that. That took a lot of investments. My focus actually had been really on the transit authorities because your buses may run a couple of times a day. Theirs are running continuously. So we've made great inroads and ended up with the first in all of upstate. I saw the article today. I've certainly, I actually have talked to a couple of people about what happened in Bethlehem. As much as I do think we need to transition, I recognize these timelines are very, very ambitious. So I've been talking to a few people about the ambitiousness of the timeline. There is money again on the table. There's an additional $1 billion overall, which includes $500 million of that is from the Environmental Bond Act that all the voters adopted over a year ago now. So there is money, but there is a price difference, and of course there is the infrastructure. I'm not sure where things are here on that, but you can tell me if there's.
We just spoke about it, and we're doing infrastructure, so we're doing a large project to be able to meet the needs of the future. We are going to hold off on buying a bus this year and look at doing the funding
for next year. Yeah, that's. I actually am disappointed that the market just hasn't caught up. And I also spoke to the auto dealers last week. There was such a clamor for EV buses when the price of gas went over $5 $5 a gallon after the invasion of Ukraine. That, as we all know, is leveled off now, and the EV market is suffering again. And of course, the infrastructure just still. I was told in 2018 when I bought a plug-in hybrid that all the infrastructure was going to be in 2019. So there you go, 5 years later. In general, not for buses. So we're not meeting our targets, and we recognize that's going to be readdressed right now.
We are building a new transportation center in this district that will be geared towards having charging stations in place.
Terrific.
Yeah, so we're planning for it.
And kudos. In the end, these are, as I know many of you know better than I, very expensive up front, but in the end, it is intended to seriously save money. But the infrastructure has just, when I think of the conversations I was having in 2018, just as I was researching vehicles, and we just have not caught up. It's accelerating. It's accelerating around the country, but some of the global dynamics are also affecting this. So that's a short. I know I was interrupting, but I welcome. I'm sure I missed a few things. If there's any other questions, there you go, Tim. Thank you.
There was a rumor that there was additional revenue available. I think you might have referring to this 1.35 billion above the governor's executive budget that the legislative leaders and the governor had agreed on. This money is real. And you kind of were implying that that's already spoken for.
Well, so that was, I think that was finalized on Friday, because Friday was March 1st. That's the deadline on when it has to be done. It hit the papers Saturday. And so that is true. It's every year a four-way agreement. So both legislative leaders, the governor, and the comptroller have to agree so that nobody can be accused of making up numbers or everybody comes in at the beginning of the year with what they see our revenues are and where we are fiscally. Everyone has a different number. They have to, by law, have a four-way agreement on that with the comptroller by March 1st. So the good news is this year, which has happened the last couple of years, there was a four-way agreement to agree that the revenues have been better than originally projected when the governor's budget was proposed. So that is the 1.35. I'm on a text chain with a number of members, and everyone had a different idea of how to spend it. So I think that by Saturday morning, there were 20 proposals, and that money was spent 20 times over. That is part of what's giving a little bit of relief. And I should add, part of why that was good news is because we started the year with almost a $4 billion deficit. And even by New York standards, that's a big number. And we don't have the COVID relief dollars that we've had the last 2 years, which really helped, thanks to Chuck Schumer and Gillibrand and our delegation. The Inflation Reduction Act and a few others really did help on multiple fronts. That's gone. that money is gone. And so we still haven't addressed all of the deficit, but that was extremely good news this weekend because it gives a little more breathing room for eds and meds. So because healthcare, the cost, and again, I don't need to tell any of you the cost of healthcare. I live in Albany. I tell everyone often I live between Albany Med and St. Peter's, the two longest wait rooms, emergency rooms, the wait times in the entire state. We have serious problems. Many of you may be in the sandwich generation with aging parents, between nursing homes, between care for those who may be disabled. It's just, it's a tug of war to where that money is going to go. But the speaker has assured, it has assured us that we are going to backfill from this hold harmless. So I think we'll see better news from the governor's budget, at least for education overall. It's a long way of answering that. Yes, that we had a little bit of good news over the weekend, even if everybody has a different way to spend it. So tonight we were briefing on transportation, and in addition to all the healthcare needs, our roads, it's a constant investment on the roads and bridges. So that always eats. Well, although we had a mild winter, there's always billions in a backlog of just roads and bridges. So, and I know that's always important. I welcome any thoughts, and I know there's so many more issues. So you are one of the highest performing school districts in the state, as you know. So I'm always proud to represent you. And I was not at the BOCES meeting this year because we had a meeting at the Albany Port, which has been been on a little bit of a roller coaster with getting some funding there. But I know BOCES, I just mentioned a couple of things, so I'm not sure if there's anything on that.
Well, we appreciate what you do, and you've been here for us so much, and basically got us out of the big jam a few years back, and I appreciate that. I'm trying to remember, I think you're a second grader to write your letter at that point, so not seventh grader. So, thank you for that. I don't know if we have any questions for you, but we definitely do appreciate coming and your support for the community and for the issues that support all the members of this community.
Well, thank you, and again, I'm sorry to interrupt on the meeting, but I'm trying to get to everyone. It's always but I think it's more important to get out here while things are pending, just to give some reassurances, because there's just so much negative news. And even on the buses today, just reading some of that today was just, there's challenges. None of this is getting easier, but.
And I always thank you. You're always receptive and available. You're one of the few people that I know always text. It's you texting, so I truly appreciate your ability to be able to have an ear and always be open to listen. So thank you.
Well, thank you. And I should mention on the pre-K, Guilderland has raised this, and I'm not sure if it's been an issue here about the lottery. Yes, okay. I have pending legislation on that we are still trying to move that would give a little bit of flexibility. We've just had there's some problem. They're just worried that it may go against some of the federal legislation on that, and it's I've had bills I can't move for 8 years. I also have the bill, and you're very familiar with this, Tim. I have the legislation now for over 8 years on pre-K funding to get the state reimbursement, and I have tremendous support. Nobody argues against it. It is the fiscal cost. So I know most school districts will bus kindergarten through 12, and you're not reimbursed for anything on pre-K, which I just find absolutely maddening. So it's just a cost thing. And they feel that once they do it, it opens up a door. And because of this age issue that some children are still 3.5 in pre-K, it's also more costly. I also have the bill that would like to change the age of the start date of kindergarten. So some of these things, that's part of why I'm not retiring, I guess. Maybe I'll have better luck if I get a chance to move to the Senate. So we'll continue to champion some of this. So please know, I should also add, because there's a few new faces here. I was a school board member, and I recognize none of you are doing this for the compensation. In fact, my kids were very young then, and I remember the babysitters I had to pay just to attend, and I served in Albany. But please know, I recognize there's no big check waiting for you, so I think it's really important. I just saw one of your, well, I guess his kids have grown now, but I just saw Charlie Krasansky at one of the events. Many of you remember, a very active and engaged family. But please know, I recognize that you're volunteers, and even when you disagree on issues, and these issues can get so contentious, I know everyone stepped up with the best of intentions. It really does make a difference. And to those who even attend, I think it's terrific. It shows with the children too. So I continue to be a text away, and always happy to come back. I'm sorry I'm missing more. Every so often I get children presenting on some of the nights that I've come in, but always happy to come back. And if you'll forgive me, my first event was at 8:30 this morning, and I have another one at 8:30 tomorrow. So it is that season. So
Thank you for making us part of your.
okay. Yes, thank you. And if there's anything else, I'll let you get back to your presentation then. Sorry, I didn't even have any paper. Sometimes I've had handouts, but we haven't even done a PowerPoint this year. It's just the numbers are too fluid to put them in too much ink. But hopefully we'll continue to have good news. You'll hear a little bit more about where both those one houses are. If not by next week, certainly the following. And of course, our goal is to be done by the end of the month, but no wagers on that just yet. So, okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you again for allowing me to interrupt, and wish all well. Thank you. All right. Yeah. Good night, everyone. Thank you. Oh, thank you.
Just to clarify one aspect that something that we talked about with pre-K lottery. So I know I've talked about this before. The lottery itself, there is no ability to be able to state that it's first come for students and families that are on the socioeconomic poverty level. It's for everybody. So there could be an opportunity where we have families who cannot afford to send their children to pre-K programs and not get into that. We have been lucky enough to have that happen, but in other school districts such as Gilliland or large school districts, or even us someday could have that happen where a family goes in the lottery, are not able to have that income, and then lose an opportunity that should be able to.
We signed on to a resolution in Gilliland that went to NISBA's 7-hour 45-minute business meeting that I was fortunate enough to attend. And that unfortunately did not pass, is my recollection. But I don't think it did, but it was problematic in different areas for different reasons. But it may have legal repercussions. So we are fortunate if we can get everyone who wants to go to be able to go. But transportation is a whole other issue that she mentioned in the previous meeting, and it could help other families with logistical problems of getting it instead. But yeah, it's something that Gilderman and other districts and people have signed up for that.
Yeah, with the large amount of the 24 United is signed up to it as well.
So yeah.
Hi, Jim.
Thank you, Jim, for your policy.
So tax cap, nothing has changed from last month. The growth factor is still 1.25%. The CPI is capped out at 2, even though it's really 4.1. So we're allowed, before exclusions, $20.75 million. We have a capital levy exclusion, including basically it's the amount we pay in the budget over the amount of state aid we get. for a little over $200,000. There's an ERS adjustment because it's going up by more than 2% on the rate, which is a little different, but adding that all together, it's just slightly over $21 million for a 3.75% increase. So that is our tax cap, and that's the amount in the draft budget still.
Oh. Sorry. I clicked a lot of buttons and-
Okay, so our estimated state aid, which still comes from the governor's budget, is a little over $9 million. Tax cap maximum is $21 million. Other revenue, including interest and other monies coming in, is a little over $600,000. Our allocated fund balance, based on 2.5% of the budget, is $862,000. We have to transfer the $3 million remaining of the capital reserve that was approved as part of the capital project over to the capital project, and that has to be budgeted for in the 24-25 year. Total is $34,482,366. The use of the capital reserves is a one-time item, which equates to about 10% of that increase overall. So without that, it would be 4.66% increase budget to budget, comparing apples to apples. Foundation aid, as you can see, it grew very slowly for a number of years. We had 2 huge years, and now it's back to 1.48% for the current year. So I don't need to go into too much detail with all these districts having trouble with the hold harmless being taken away in the governor's proposal. Fortunately, we weren't affected because our actual student population is higher. But if we ever got into a situation where it was going lower, we could be affected by that in the future. Something to consider.
I should have asked Assembly, do we know what this vote is if they change the whole harmless provision?
If I remember correctly, and don't quote me on this, I think it was somewhere in the high ones was the reduction for the districts that got reduced.
So it would, the 1 million or billion I found wouldn't cover it.
It's not likely, no.
We have neighboring districts that I spoke to superintendents. Some are $650,000, $750,000 is a $1.2 million budget cap right now.
There's an article.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dr. Waddell has been outspoken regarding, and so, we are not that big, but my thoughts go out to our kids that are in that, and those students and those districts, that are facing those challenges.
I wonder if they're, I don't want to be a conspiracy theorist, but I do worry sometimes that this attempt is saying, okay, folks, it's time to consolidate because you've lost so much enrollment. We're not going to keep we're not going to maintain your foundation aid. You're going to keep losing enrollment. Time to consolidate school districts. I don't think we're vulnerable to that, but I'm going to believe there are others.
The only problem with that is the 40% increase in foundation aid and capital aid that comes from consolidating. So they're not going to help themselves for a few years until that goes away.
Who's they?
The state.
Yeah, okay.
So if they encourage consolidation and they still have the 40% increase, they're just going to see a bigger jump. So
And how far can you bus?
Yeah.
Yeah, but,
We're not busing, we're gonna bus them.
I understand. Well, you could maintain these schools, just say we're going to have less of an administrative overhead and other sorts of things. So, nobody's saying that, but I worry a little bit about that.
I don't think it's something that is off the chart. They talk about regionalization in other places. There's school districts that have 75 to 100 kids as a whole K-12. There are obvious components throughout the district, so I'm sure that is a conversation that's out there. And I don't think we've heard it in our chances.
So overall, our expenses and revenues are exactly the same. It assumes the tax cap limit increase of a little over $750,000, $3 million transfer, the aid from the governor's budget proposal, and our allocated fund balance with a projected gap of 0. That's it.
Any thoughts or questions? Thank you. Thank you, Jim. Thank you for putting that together.
Mike, and I promise I will be a little bit as quick as possible through this one. But I want to go over. It is a heavy copy. I have consolidated. A Department of Health slideshow that was presented to school districts across the board. So a lot of this, there are things in here that I took out because they were directed towards school districts on how to like manage reporting and like some of our reporting requirements. If you don't need to see that, so I took that out. So I only took in some of the key components, and I wanted to share all of it with everybody and put it on as a resource. You probably need not get all of it, but I want to kind of get it in. As you are aware, here are some acronyms and definitions, so that way if I say some of these things and you're wondering what they are, and if you know already, I can go through some of them with you. The HCS is the Health Commerce System. It's quite a pain in the butt to go through, but it's what we utilize to be able to put in all of our reports and departments. We have to go through each year a law that was passed to be able to test for lead in school districts. And when it first started off, it was not supposed to exceed 15 micrograms per liter, which is parts per billion. The district went through all of those testing requirements. They went through a remediation phase. We've been tested again. We went through a smaller remediation phase because we didn't have a large amount of areas that were above where our drinking water is. Places where there could be lead contaminants, they're labeled not potable water, such as science rooms and places where kids should not be drinking. We have been in compliance throughout the board regarding the 15 parts per billion that was put into legislation. So that was going into that. In December of 2023, there was a new regulation that was put into place. With that, the regulation went from 15 parts per billion to 5 parts per billion. So schools were given a testing window from 2023 to 2025 to test. Our testing window was March of 2024. We actually beat that by a month. So we did do our testing as per our regulation that we were supposed to do. When we did it, and it's a triannual, it used to be every 5 years, now it's every 3 years. So kind of put it up there. When we did it in February 16th. We found that there were 5 areas that came out above the 5 parts per billion. In the letter that I sent out to the community, it was 5.3, 6.6, 7.9, 6.0, and 6.2. So again, we were in compliance all the way up until the regulations changed. And then now with the regulations, we were a little bit high in 5 of those areas that we've already remediated some of them. One of the remediation areas was the drinking fountain bottle filler at the junior senior high school. Just by happenstance, we already replaced that after the lead testing was done because it was pretty old and pretty nasty and it wasn't working. So we put a brand new water bottle filler in there. We have it offline right now until we have it tested, but we already replaced that line. The other ones were in classrooms. They're in the elementary school. They have little bubblers, they call them, that are part of that sink area. So 2 of those came out a little bit higher. One was at 5.3 and one was at 6.6. And then, and the room numbers are listed in the letter. I'm being extremely as transparent as I'm required to be as well. And then the sinks in those 2 rooms are also as high. We have now had those all marked off, and we are waiting for the new things to come in. Some of those fixtures in themselves cost about $2,000 to $4,000, so they are pretty expensive. So we are getting them in. Might be a backlog, or director of facilities is working on it. After they're done and checked, then we have to, and they're finished by maintenance, then we have to get them tested again for lead, and then after that, our remediation week. So we have 6 weeks to be able to post all of this on our website with our remediation efforts to show what we're doing. And this kind of goes through when our first draw was supposed to be, which I kind of said that we did. And then that goes through applicable sampling locations requiring what we're supposed to do and how we're supposed to do it. They must be collected at all outlets that are used for drinking and or cooking. Applicable versus non-applicable. I will work with individuals to make sure which ones you're testing or not testing, or I'll have my designee, which is the director of facilities, and they make sure that we go through all of them purely and making sure that they're all done correctly. And here's some examples of what they are, of what is considered applicable. And rule of thumb is basically in any outlet in any room within a school that is not used by students and does not provide water for drinking or cooking does not require sampling. So the science room, for example, is meant for science, it's not meant for drinking or cooking, so therefore you should not be utilizing some of those portions. So they are labeled non-portable.
What about the faculty lounge where they have a sink?
That is considered non-portable because they should not be using that for drinking.
Okay, but it's labeled non-portable.
I would have to check with the director of facilities. And honestly, I can't tell you if they tested that or not because I don't have the report in front of me, so that would be.
Right, no, it's just.
I would imagine that it is labeled, but I can check if they didn't test it. And then these are areas that they're talking about: bus garage, point of entry, science, art, sinks, bathroom sinks with tempered outlets. Example. And as I already talked about, and again, I'm going a little quick, but it's getting a little late in the evening. 5 micrograms per liter. We've already been through that, and I've already kind of explained where we are as a district. Any questions on this instead of me kind of running through the rest of it and making sure that I'm just kind of boring you and go through where you are and picking this up. Barb?
Frank, can you explain why, why does it test differently? Like, if it's the same source, right? It's the same source of water that comes in. Is it about filtration? Is it about the pipes, the age of pipes that are behind it? Like,
It could be a litany of different things that go into it. It could be the pipes, it could be the fixtures, it could be what was used when the fixture was put in. It could be the way the sample was taken. If they're not, having to go through a treatment where they're running those systems all the time and the water is sitting longer. The director of facilities is actually working through a plan right now to make sure that our faucets are turned on and ran through, because he wants to make sure that we test always low. So he's making sure that, sitting can cause a component for them to test a little bit higher, so he's making sure that he works with our maintenance and custodial team to go through it. So there's a lot of reasons that those things can happen. Again, this is a lot smaller. They've done a lot of remediation with some of the piping, some of the soldering. So it could be even some of the way that, like, the screws that are used that maybe are going into it. Right. A lot of different ways. I can't answer for sure.
So one other component of the law is that if you have non-compliance, you have to provide water.
Mhm.
You mentioned that you have to provide.
Yeah, so we check our ratios. We are in compliance. For the staffing and for our faculty, we have provided water coolers since the beginning, since I believe 2017-15. They've had water coolers in the district. We continue that process in the district. So faculty rooms and office all have water coolers. Any other questions? Okay, that was quick.
All right, thank you, and that's attached to the agenda.
Yep.
If anyone would like to look through it. Very interesting. With that, we move to item 3.4. Caitlin, welcome you. Report.
Yeah. So first I want to talk about Odyssey again. They had their competition this past Saturday and we had 2 teams. And I know I'm very excited the program started back up again because I did it for 9 years. And I would say that it had a big impact on my ability to problem solve and stuff. And I had the privilege to actually judge one of our teams over the weekend and they did a phenomenal job. Also, the International Cleaning Service Club sold candy grams to raise money for a school in Kenya. Because we all know that our school district is kind of more privileged, and we kind of wanted to extend that back to people who don't have the opportunity to get educational time. Also, in the high school, we recognized Black History Month, and every day in February, there was an announcement spreading a different fact about Black history, and I thought that was really interesting. Also, the volleyball program held a youth program, because we've recently been expanding. We just recently got a modified team, and now we had a 3rd to 6th grade clinic, so it was great to see that growing. Also, the high school held a mental health career cafe. Around 20 students participated, and they got a chance to speak to 3 people in the mental health field about different career options.
Also, they have a lot of stuff. The Model UN team went to Toronto, and I think everyone had a great time. That was their second one of the year. The physics class is held the winter wave. So what everybody does is they build like a cardboard boat and they race across the pool. It's really just a fun time, and I think everyone enjoyed it. And then also, I just wanted to call attention to the fact that the high school show is in a few weeks, and the community should try to come out and watch. It'll be good.
And this is Chicago.
Yeah. Not the best for young kids.
And the stage, I went to look at it, the stage setup is really very similar to what you would see on like a true show. And that's Peter Crafton helps right to do that, and there's other family members who do it. So hats off to the families that are giving their time to help with that stage. And when you see it, you're gonna be like, wow. And it's built to code appropriately because it's stairs and a second tier. So, but they've done an amazing job putting it together. It's just hats off to the people who are spending their time on Saturdays and Friday nights putting that out there.
And all the past.
And the amount of work that goes into the show it couldn't be done without the support of the community.
Right, with that, right, superintendent.
Okay, great. So I will look everything up so I don't mess it up. So we had our capital project. As you know, we went out to bid. The board accepted the awards. Our first kickoff meeting with the architect, engineers, district construction manager, general contractor, and all the times on the site work, electrical, mechanical, all the people that kind of support whatever is getting built into it. Jim will be there. I will be there. The director of facilities will be there. So it's the large component kickoff that we're having for occupations and setting up where we'll be, and also kind of understanding what the schedule will look like. That's going to be on the 12th. So that is a really important meeting. After that, we're going to be having probably weekly meetings with all of those people, or bi-weekly meetings with all of the people on that project, along with our OACM meetings. That's owner architect construction manager meetings that we have. We have those bi-weekly as well. So it's really starting to get going. We'll have a better understanding of when the ground gets broken, but it's right around the corner. So it's pretty exciting that it's going to be there when the headaches begin. So that's kind of how it's going to go. The elementary school project is still at the Office of Facilities Planning, and we are waiting on that. And so that means when the site work is going to get done at the elementary school, what it's going to look like for summer there, we don't have an answer because we don't know the time frame. So when we know when the time frame's up, then we can plan accordingly for bids and understanding what we're going to go after. Also, our energy performance contract, that's another component that we're doing. That's K-12, the reductions of our energy use, switching everything to LED and some other things. That is also at the state office of facilities, and we don't know when that's coming back. So we're just waiting on those things to get started. That will also get started in the summer. If that gets approved as well. So a lot of moving components. Another thing that we're doing, because we're doing a lot with the facilities, the high school has that secure vestibule that we've been talking about now for 3 years, we'll say. That has finally been approved through state ed. So as you know, we're basically going to take that doorway that closes off before the little vestibule where the staff members are to be able to sign people in, and we're just going to move that up. So we close off that whole area similar to the way that the middle school is. So that's a secure area. Parents can wait. People can wait in. They won't be walking through the building. And we're also taking an opportunity to kind of facelift that lobby a little bit. So we're going to be knocking out that ceiling and redoing some lights so it doesn't look as dreary, possibly putting plants in to the area, because maybe the facilities committee is after plants. So we are looking at revamping. It's not a complete overhaul of that area, but we want to brighten it up. We have the opportunity. It's part of the project because we have to touch some of those ceilings anyways. They've already done asbestos testing. There's no asbestos. So that's a positive thing that helps us get through the project a little quick. So that we're hoping we can get done in the summer as well. A lot of positive things happening. Next, the eclipse. So as you know, the eclipse is occurring on April 8th. We've had a lot of conversations. School districts have a lot of conversations. There's been a lot of what do we do, what do we not do? Is there a liability? Is there not a liability? And there's a lot of controllable factors and a lot of not controllable factors. Not controllable factors is really K through 5. That's right at the peak time that we're going to be dismissing our students. There is concern that, they're gonna be on the bus, they're gonna be looking up, they could be walking home. We're putting them out in an area in time that could cause damage if they choose to look at it. And, retinal damage can happen without them understanding or knowing it. You don't have to feel pain, and still it can occur.
Tell me about it.
as you are well aware as the way do. The high school already dismisses at 2:30, so an hour before the peak time. But the elementary school is a major concern, and there's a concern of what do we do or what do we not do to help safeguard our students. There are a couple options I want to throw out to you as a board. One, we currently have 4 contingency days that we have not used. One on May 3rd, and then we have the other 3 that are all connected to the Memorial Day. So 4.
Yeah, it's a 5-day week.
Yeah.
So it's Friday, Monday, and Tuesday, and Wednesday?
So it's Thursday, Friday,
Thursday, Friday,
and then Tuesday. Correct. Yeah.
That's a lot.
Yeah, that's typical. That's a 3-day contingency that we always have. And this year we had an extra, so we created an extra, thinking that we would have a stronger winter, and we did not. And that was May 3rd. One of the suggestions and options would be able to take one of those contingency days. I don't think we're going to use 4 in the next, month. No, I know that could be the kiss of death right there, but you never know. Right? The furnace wasn't on right now. So we could utilize one of those contingency days. That would have to be a board vote and approval to be able to switch it, because it was part of the contract, and part of the calendar that was voted on last year. But we could take one of those contingency days and move it over to that day and completely safeguard any liability that the district would have by not having school on that day. Another option that you can also choose to do is we could look at an early dismissal. An early dismissal, you would have to do at least an hour prior for the elementary school, so that I would be looking probably at a half day, so we could put in some professional development for the staff. That could be done. We do have the instructional minutes that we wouldn't be able to, we wouldn't risk any of our aid or anything like that. So we keep the contingency days where they are, but do a half day, and then still be able to allow dismissal and still safeguard any of the concerns that we come up with. Thoughts?
Are we in the path?
Not the rest.
Not the rest.
Totality.
Like an hour and a half.
There's still concerns and always come up with it. There's an unknown component to that.
Watch it will be cloudy.
I know.
Oh.
It'll snow.
I saw
So-
the probability of it being cloudy.
It'll be a snow day anyway.
So again, we could just go with it and just,
Don't look up, kids.
just
It's
say,
no problem.
Well, it'd be
and
nice
say for
for
train people.
people to be able to participate.
Yeah.
You're not on a school bus.
Right.
Yeah.
Whether it's here or at home.
And if it's a half day, teachers could talk about it in the morning to remind kids and not to look at.
What do you think should be for parents?
Easy for parents, yes. Right.
Yeah.
That's easy. Keep schedule as is, no components, and train the students. Saying, like, look, when you're on the bus, you can't look up at it. You're gonna hurt yourself. And just do some training that is out there. That is the best that we can do, and understand that the parents have a major concern with it. They do have the right to come get their children. And give that as an option as well. So I want to kind of throw everything out there.
I'm leaning towards dismissing our role.
That's
Yeah,
right, dismissal.
that's where I'm leaning. But I could be swayed.
Doesn't it has to be construction for minutes.
Where does staff or?
Ken Young had concerns regarding liability issues. He asked me about it, and when I told him about the liabilities through Doug, he had concerns too. Because again, it's like if you're having students outside watching it, and you give them, you have to buy the right glasses, right? Because if you don't buy the right glasses and they're not the right ones, you're already causing an issue. And then you have to make sure that you're supervising those students correctly as they're using the glasses, and making sure that you're watching. So those are things you can easily do, and if a teacher wants to do that, 100% support it. Just making sure that those things are safeguarded and put in place.
It's like 3:26 or something.
Right. It's right at the time. High school's already dismissed. It really is the elementary school is the time.
I also don't want to be cynical, but I gotta think if you tell a third grader not to look up.
Yeah.
they're gonna look up.
Paige, I wrote that, but I just didn't say it. It's basically a telling.
Yeah. I think the best thing to do is you to paint like some sort of map on the ground for everyone to follow.
Tell them don't look down.
So what I'm hearing is keep the contingency days where they are and explore a possible early dismissal of some sort. Or keep as.
I prefer not to keep that. I mean, really, yeah, I don't know. It seems like one of those once in a lifetime things that we shouldn't have much kids start having plus.
Yeah.
But you don't want the liability of there being here and having to.
Well, you have to keep them here longer if you want them here. No, I'm saying early dismissal. That's what I agree.
Yes.
And
That's
it gives
what I agree.
people an opportunity to
Go home.
Yeah, so they can go, yeah.
Go home and don't look up. Right, but don't look down.
Now, they're required to use glasses.
So do we have access to glasses or can we point families to glasses?
Some staff members have purchased classes that they are there. Some libraries have.
Yeah, but.
Want some on Amazon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, but I'm saying so that folks know what to look for when they're getting it. If we're going to do that, communicating what's going on and having some, this is a great opportunity to provide some interesting education about what's going on. What is an eclipse and why is it happening now? And, so, or here's what to look for when you buy your glasses.
I think there's specifics.
I heard that someone who makes glasses that someone wears, they're giving away like 200 pairs of glasses on April 1st or something. So, yeah, so they're different purveyors. So,
So I'm hearing that. Like early dismissals.
say now.
Well, I have to look at that. So that impacts lunches and then impacts other components. So we have to look at how that schedule will work and then how that trickles down to the rest of the building. So I can't guarantee an hour because then it might impact other things. So I would say, yep, I get it, but I just want to make sure that I'm not going to say yes to something that my food service director or principal is going to be like, what did you do?
There's protocols in place.
Yeah, I guess I got to confirm that. Okay, so we'll look at like an early dismissal of some sort.
This information.
Yep.
And that will go up to the parents.
Yeah,
right?
I'll work on
Give
this.
them as much.
Yeah. What day is it? April.
Do we need to
It's
vote
the
on
day of
this?
our next board
Is
meeting.
it a change to the calendar?
I have the ability to make an early dismissal change.
Like a snow day.
Yeah.
Well, no, so yeah, like the study can.
I'm
component.
good. As a board, we meet that evening and we will be meeting at a point where they will have completed. Is that feasible for everyone? Or is anyone driving an hour and a half away?
I'm traveling.
I-
You're going to Buffalo.
I am,
Okay.
I'm only going like an hour and a half. I could probably be back.
I would if I had the night off.
I know.
We can do that April.
I have a kid ready for college.
I have as a board, we could decide to change our meeting to, I think this is something to consider and
We'd like that.
if we had a school there, we should definitely try it. I think what we can do is to not, we have more to go in this meeting. The logistics of this, I think we can work out and we'll communicate it if we're going to make that change. Since 2 board members are possibly not going to be, or might be challenged to get here or won't be here. We can figure out the logistics of
I will not make it from Buffalo to here.
with
Not
3.
even driving.
Would you make it by Tuesday?
I would, yes.
But we need to figure out the Census Day, school district into the Census Day.
I'm looking at the calendar. I see nothing.
So it is possible that the school board might be on Tuesday of April, line, because we will be having one smart experience. All right, with that in mind,
Right. Last one. All right, the pantry tour. So just about the pantry a little bit. There's been a shift from going through the backpack program into a pantry style program. And I talked to, okay, wait, if you don't know what the backpack program is, let me kind of go through it a little bit. Backpack program, just like the pantry program, it's a self-sustaining program to be able to meet the needs of our families that are living below the poverty line or get free and reduced lunch. So at need families, people maybe that have food insecurities, that's what the backpack program is for. The backpack program was allowing some non-perishable items to go home with students. There really wasn't a ton of choice, and we'd go home in a backpack basically every Friday from October to June. If there was a holiday, or a long break, they would add a couple more items into it. As you can imagine, there's some stigma that goes along with it. Some of our secondary students really didn't go for it. And there wasn't a lot of choice. So there was a limited opportunity for our students to get it. Switching to a pantry style program allows for the ability of food options, including frozen and refrigerated items, and also household items. So already there's a huge switch. We're moving from focusing on a family from individual students. And when you're focusing on it, when I've asked for numbers, and thank you, Barbara, for asking that question. They couldn't give me hard numbers at the moment because I asked today, literally at 3 o'clock. But what they did say is, we're focusing on families, and those families with the amount of kids that are in their homes matches the same amount of students, basically, based anecdotally, of what they had in the past. But we've now been able to change the scope of our reach, right? Before, it was only non-perishable that went in a backpack. Now it's a wide array, as you'll see, including clothing, birthday items. They're working to get like donations of like old, spirit wear as well. So kids, when they have spirit day, they may not afford it, they can get options there. So we're really starting to change that idea behind what it's supposed to be. And then we'll leave the team. The team really did a great job. Principal, Mr. Renzio, the social workers, social psychologists, they really worked hard to be able to look at that program and how do we build it. This has been the first year of this program. We have not had a summer yet. So we don't know how it's going to be staffed in the summer. They're finding things that are working out that are working really well, and they're seeing things that they can do better. For example, getting more information out at the secondary, seeing how we can get families down to the secondary, and also transportation. Right? We're finding that families may want to get there, but they might not have a car or vehicle to get there. So how can we help kind of support them a little bit more? Those are options that we have to explore more as a district, and there's a lot of talk. We just haven't figured out the specifics of it yet. So families come on a weekly basis. They get to shop. They use the refrigerator, frozen baking goods, and household products. There's clothing options. There's snack options. And Mr. Renzio told me there's something that wasn't done in the past. So there's a cool one. They share these at the cafeteria. So they're given out to those families and kids in the school district. So even during the day, the lunch aides people are giving out snacks to students who may not have the opportunity to have snacks. So we're even impacting a lot of our students here in the building. We use notification that goes off in the previous years. We use our free and reduced list. Our social workers and other people reach out that we've done in the past. We do want to do more options of getting out to people. We're exploring different ways to notify families and figure out how we can get more in. Just like getting more families to be able to say, yeah, I want to apply for free and reduced lunch. That can be a stigma and an issue. Same with using a pantry. It's very similar. There's a need to notify and involve more middle school and high school families. We're working on ways to overcome that. Example, transportation is one, and also kind of the stigma. Kids, high school kids and middle school kids, they don't want to be seen as the kid that goes down and has to do that. So we're trying to work with those parents. And we do have families that use it, that are K-12 students. But we do want to be able to see more options from about questions that I was not able to answer that I could get answers for.
Is there a need that can be supported by members of the community anonymously or, through?
So I asked that, and the answer is no. They have a very well endowed program. They have about $10,000 currently in the program. So they have a ton that is in there. The only thing that we would be looking for from the community is gently used spiritware or spiritware that they want to donate for kids, because we're not purchasing that with the food money. But really, other than that, it's a self-sustaining program. They've been able to do it. They work really hard with grants and donations already. So we already get a lot of support at that point. So there's no other need. And then wait till you see it is quite impressive.
Okay.
So with that, we are going on a field trip within this building to the pantry. Nice. So. This is officially part of it.
You can choose to stay or.
You don't have to go. Come on, let's go. Everyone's welcome. It's the educational.
It's this way out. Yeah.
Yeah, great. Well, except we're 8:45 and they haven't even acted on anything yet.
Oh, gee, you scared me. Sure that. Why so late?
We had Assemblywoman Fahey here who took some time to present, and we did the budget, and then there were other presentations. And
Oh, so you may expect it to be a long. It's just because people talk.
well, not only that, they're doing an
Yeah,
inspection of the food pantry, and so it takes a while.
Yeah.
Once they get to the presentations, it's usually pretty quick.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. How neat. What's after this for? What's left after?
So the committee meetings,
Oh.
that's going to be a little bit,
Oh,
but the committee meeting, reports,
Yeah.
and then all the action stuff.
Does that usually go pretty quick?
That part usually goes pretty quick, but then there's going to be community We'll see how long.
Okay, well, what time is it now? What time is it?
Oh, I'm gonna guess we're out of here about 9:15.
You think so? Okay. I'll see if you're right. I'll say 9:15. I'll go with 9:15 with you. We'll see. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, that close, like.
I was there.
Oh, nice to stretch out a little. That was lovely. And Frank, is there like do you guys have like a point now?
Yeah, they work,
You
they,
don't
yeah,
have to-
yeah, they work with the social workers until they have like a setup that they do. Again, I have to give all the credit.
Who's that?
And we want to do more.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Thank you all for your patience as we had an extra filter work. With that, we'll move on to item 4 in the agenda, the approval of minutes. Would anyone like to discuss the minutes from the previous meeting? Would anyone like to move?
I'll second.
Second?
Yeah, either way.
Okay, all right, all in favor? Aye. Thank you. Consider them approved. And I'd like to thank the team that's involved in the pantry and thank the community for their support. Moving to 5.1, the treasurer's reports. Any questions of us? No? All right, pitter patter. Would anyone like to move? I will move them. Second? I'll second. All in favor? Aye. All right. We're gonna go to 5.1.2. Acceptance of warrants. Any thoughts or questions? No, we just do that? No, that was 5.1. Treasury reports, well, let's accept the warrants if anyone wants. Well, it seems like it's included.
Yeah.
But we're gonna call it included. Yeah. I'm sorry, I skipped over it. 5.2 personnel items. We have the possibility of welcoming some wonderful new people to the community. And are there any thoughts or questions on this one? You're a tennis coach?
Yeah, not for boys. We don't have a boys team. There's not enough interest at the moment.
Okay. Anything else? Okay. With that, would anyone like to move all the items under 5.2? All the way down to 5.2.13.
I'll move it. I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you. Thank you for your understanding. Well, 5.3, CSE recommendations. Anything? Move it. I'll move it. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Substitute teacher appointments. Anyone?
I'll do that.
Second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
And the amended 24-25 district calendar, Frank.
Okay, so, no matter if 30 people look at something and go over it, there's always an opportunity or chance for a mistake to occur. And that's what happened. We had more than 30 people probably look at the calendar. And what we didn't realize is that we left off a day in January. Pretty much 30 days in January on the other calendar, it's 31 days. Yep. Yeah, there were a lot of people who missed it. And people were counting days, counting the numbers, and I mean, we went over that.
Year.
It was, and there was a lot of people who looked at it. We all said the same thing when it came. Someone said it to me on a Saturday morning, and I go, "You're kidding." And yep, there was that mistake. So we went back with the calendar, redeveloped it, added a day. What I did was I modeled it after a couple other schools in the area because we want to try to work out some PD opportunities. So Eid al-Fitr was already coming off as part of Professional Development Day on March 31st. I made that an official day off, similar to like what we do with Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. So now instead of it being a Professional Development Day, that day is off, March 31st on the calendar. The Professional Development Day has now been added. I don't have it in front of me. It's on a Wednesday. I want to say it's March 19th.
Yes.
Thank you. The reason being is because we have other school districts in the area that are a little bit larger. That we've had conversations with sharing some PD opportunities with our staff. That can save us money. We can use it through BOCES, and also it gives our opportunities, such as like some of our teacher assistants. We can then put more money into it for our district and their district and share a lot of our staffing opportunities with PD. So that's why it's on a Wednesday, because we want to be able to do some partnership opportunities. That is why there was an error and completely missed that one. That's why it is up for
Opportunity.
Yep.
Any thoughts or questions on it?
Just something I've never noticed before. I guess that little number in the bottom right corner is the number of school days.
Yeah.
All right.
So there's 185 days in the calendar, 181 pupil days. The teacher contract is 182. There's 4 professional conference days, and everything all lines.
Awesome.
As far as we know at this point, it's a lot of counting and making sure, because it really goes down to the number one thing is age, right? It comes down to the number one thing is 180 days has to be done in order for us to get a rate. 4 days of that can be professional development, which is 176. But you need 180 in order to make sure that you're getting your full. That's our major concerns.
Would anyone like to move this? Second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
With that, we have a bunch of non-resident student admission requests. Thoughts or questions?
Are these all tuition paid?
Yes, they are.
And we updated that policy.
We did.
Yes.
Would anyone like to move it?
I'll move it. I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. An out-of-town field trip request seniors to go to Jacobson. Any thoughts or questions? No. Here we go. Would anyone like to move it?
I will.
Second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
With that, we're gonna go through some old business. Audit committee did not meet.
We should meet again in April.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah, so whatever day we decide to meet, we'll
All right.
what.
We will decide what day we're gonna meet. And then we had a curriculum committee meeting, or no?
We did not. We have one coming up on the 19th.
Fantastic. And facilities committee did meet, but I don't
You guys
think
have-
we were there, right?
Me.
No, I had flu. I was nowhere.
Yes.
I took back some notes. You want me to do it? Or do you-
If you have some notes, that'd be great. I've done plans.
That was after you. We met on February 6th, and Neil, Barbara, Frank, and myself, and Ms. Robbins. We talked about the budget, and maintenance is going on, and hopes over April break to fill potholes. The constant roof leaks because of the slushy, wet winter, and they're constantly fixing, I think they fixed water issues at the elementary school since the last meeting. You already talked about the capital project. We also talked about the baseball field with the capital project. The baseball team is going to be out of their field for a season, but Joe was able to make accommodations to the field in Gilderland. Right. And supposedly it's going to be a very nice accommodation, so maybe that'll make it up for the gorgeous field. Yeah, so hopefully it makes it a little bit better. They have to travel for the home games. Okay.
It's a nice thing.
Yeah. The high school entrance we already talked about. We talked about the capital project a little bit and some things we had to decide in the library, which we can move forward with the doors.
Yeah, so we had to move up the library a little bit because of the egresses. The state has certain limits that they want you to be able to walk through, so we had to change some little bit of outcome. But the good thing that ended up coming out of that was we decided that, and we worked with the librarian, that one of the offices that's in there is not really needed. She goes, I haven't used it in like 3 years. We're going, well, then why don't we just get rid of it? And she's like, oh my gosh, it'd be great. So we're able to actually get more square footage in that library. So, given the fact hopefully budget-wise we're good to go, we're going to add that as an alternative. But the goal is now we're adding an extra door in the library because we have to.
Yeah.
So yeah, in the elementary.
That's part of the project.
Because we have to, as part of the project in order for it to get approved. But we also now are going to be taking out that little office that's in there because they don't utilize it. We're going to get some more square footage.
Right, because we'll lose some square footage on the wall where they have cases. That worked out. When we talked about 8 apartment, that in court, I think you guys talked about that in the special meeting.
Yes.
Yeah. And the elementary school gym, Frank is trying to think of ideas to refresh it, which we saw during our picture today. That there is tired.
It's tired.
Yeah.
And it's a big community component of our district. So there's things that we can do that I think that freshen it up and have it be a focal point of the district.
So he's hoping to do some of that over the summer, along with the whole of it, once we talk about it. And lastly, we talked about, this is the first year, I think, with our new facility use request system. So we just talked about how that was going now that the new season's about to start. Yeah. And then we had an after meeting where Barbara and I got to see the entrance, and then we started talking about that bell, and then that led to how to make that nicer there. And those are actually planters. We learned that if you move that bell, those are actually planters.
Not sure if there's
filled
some.
in with concrete.
Yeah.
Maybe filled with concrete. But that was actually plants.
That's fantastic. Right. I believe you had a 17-hour policy meeting as well. 2.5 hours.
Yeah, you made really good progress. I've worked really hard before our meeting. Okay, so we met on February 7th, and we have another meeting this week on the 6th. And we are really working hard to get through this whole big group of policies, which is numbered 4321, which are programs and services for students with disabilities. Tonight, you're going to see on the agenda several first reads of policies within this group. And there's a really nice list right in the agenda with all the titles. So I don't read through them all right now, that people could reference those. The first reads, because they'll be new to our district. So this is the time for first read, and then hopefully next month we'll bring back all the others that go along with them. So we can just do the second read all together as one big group. That was it with that. We talked more about policy 1222, relationships with booster clubs. We were lucky enough to have Joe Sapienza join the meeting, and he had gotten feedback from his coaches, and they just shared their thoughts on what could help in a policy to support our coaching staff of it, and what that relationship should look like in their eyes. So we are hoping to draft a policy and discuss that at our next meeting, which is on Wednesday. That would be a new policy for Voorheesville. So once we draft some language, it's gonna go back with Joe and team to then see what they think. We also finalized our wording for 8121.1 and the regulation, which is the opioid overdose prevention. And that got sent over to a legal and medical director for review. This is a required policy that's new for Voorheesville. So once we get that back from that group, we'll get it ready to bring to the full board for our first read. We talked about policy 5550, which is student privacy, which would be a new policy for Voorheesville. I think is required. We finished our work on the draft language and also had some questions for legal, so that got sent over to the legal department. And we had some good discussion. Paige, you participated in this, and just student privacy in general and how to be transparent with our students of surveillance in the district. So there's Chromebooks that are issued by the district that has software on it called Lightspeed. So just make sure students know when you're on your Chromebook, people can see what you're doing. And also we have surveillance cameras just to point out, and we have payload in bathrooms. So we came up with an idea of how to be extra transparent. I think Frank had a good idea of just talking about it at Welcome Back Assemblies every year when students come back. So instead of expecting people to read a policy and realize that that's more, I think that was productive. We did talk about policy 9520.6, right for employees to breast milk. We finished up our policy language. This would be a new policy for Voorheesville, and it is on our agenda tonight for our first reading. There was one section we were still thinking about tweaking. We needed people to opine on, but I think we'll still be able to facilitate having the first read tonight and then the final read hopefully next meeting. We did policy of 5020.3, which is rights of students with disabilities under section 504. That is on our agenda tonight for our final read. Basically just a few tweaks and updates for municipal language and law recommendations. We discussed policy 9570, retired employees' health insurance. This was an existing policy that just needed a little language tweak, and the final read is on our agenda for tonight. It basically changed the contribution language to freeze the rates instead of having increasing rates. And we briefly discussed 6220 substitute teacher policy that would be new to Voorheesville. And we agreed we're going to tweak the language to say preferred qualifications, and we hope to fix that language in that draft policy at our meeting on Wednesday. And lastly, we did not get to a group of policies, the graduation policies, but they are on our agenda for Wednesday finally, and guidance is going to come to our meeting to share their thoughts concerning this guidance as it pertains to those policies. I think that was it. Anyone on the policy committee?
That's
Great
it.
job, as
Wow.
I just said to Rachel, wow, that was a lot of work.
Yeah, that's.
That was a long meeting, but I think we're in good shape to be able to bring that whole group, which has 15 parts.
You guys have touched about 300 or 400 policies this year. So,
Yeah, that was working very hard.
yeah, thank you. All right, with that, we will move to the new business. So, when the budget was reviewed, we discussed the budget propositions about purchase of buses. So that's 7.1. Are there any thoughts or questions about the proposition or to be added to the vote in May? All good? Anyone want to move it?
Move it.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay. We have a grant that's been offered from RIT, Rochester Institute of Technology, for a project that will weigh $180. Any thoughts or questions? No? No. Want to move it? I'll move it. Second? I'll second. All in favor? Aye. Thank you very much to RIT for their donation toward the project. And we need to now amend the budget to move the money from the RIT grant within our 23-24 budget. Is there any thoughts or questions around that? Comments? All right. Move it. I'll move it. Second?
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. Excellent. Thank you. Some more donations being offered from the Jim Nichols Foundation and the PTA. And anyone want to talk about them or just want them? Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Excellent. Thank you all. And thank you very much to Jim Nichols and the PTA for the Jim Nichols Foundation. All right. We do not have any action regarding the policies that are brought for us for first read. And thank you for so committed to want to do them. Is there anything we would like to discuss regarding them at this point? I do appreciate them. There's some conservative. It seems like it touches just about everyone.
Right.
With that, we move to item 7.6. There's policy 50/2023 about students with disabilities. Are there any questions about that one? These are just revisions. Would anyone like to move it? Second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. And then revisions about retired employees' health insurance. 7.7, that's policy for 9570. Any questions or move it?
I'll move it.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. All right, this is our second opportunity for the public to be heard. We do invite the public to come forward. If there's any member of the public who would like to speak, the podium is yours.
Hi there, I'm Jen Duffy. I just wanted to let you know the solar eclipse day is 80 to 100% in Albany County, so there still is a visible eclipse here. And it is the day following spring break. So that Monday coming back from spring break might be difficult for families in our community.
I wanted to second that comment as well as elementary. Could you clarify though, is this a district half day or just elementary school?
You know,
This
I have to, it's gonna be a little.
You don't know yet,
conversation.
Thank you for the food for thought.
Okay.
Thank you for your comments. It's really what I said.
Yeah, because we're not sure yet if it's an hour or a full half day, or how that can work out, so we're gonna have to do some evaluation over the next couple of days.
Yeah, I would just say you should consider the burden to parents. I'm not in that group. I don't have young kids anymore, but this is a group, the elementary kids who will need care after school. And I think you can pick up from school as you commented on, and to make a policy change or calendar change for a small group of people to impact a large group of people, I'm not sure that makes much sense.
There were thoughts to this. We'll talk about it. Sorry. But yes, are there any other thoughts or comments? Or thank you. And opportunity for the board to be heard.
I'd like to take this opportunity to announce that I'm going to run for reelection. And my term is up this year, and it's been a pleasure to be on this board. I want to continue serving. And I do have my petitions here. If anybody's interested in signing them, I would greatly appreciate it. But it's been an honor, and I really am looking forward to continuing on the process.
Thank you. It's been a great opportunity to serve with you. And it's been quite a meeting here today, because this is it poses a lot of challenges, and I appreciate them. Me, they're ready to join us. So thank you all for being here. Thank you for your service and for your willingness to continue serving on the policy committee. You have served many
People will
hours.
sign this election
So
petition.
thank you for that.
Remind.
Okay. With that, dates to remember. Was there anything else? I didn't want that.
We're canceling facilities tomorrow, that's the date to remember. And also, we technically have a meeting possibly scheduled for the 8th, but that's. So with that, would anyone like to move to adjourn?
I would move it.
Second? Sorry. All in favor? Aye. Thank you all.